Hi, this is Michael Waits, and welcome back to India Game Changer. Today we are joined by Vikram Gupta and Yatin Kavishwar, co-founders of Awiros. Vikram and Yatin, it's great to have you on the show. How are you both doing today?
We're doing very well. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. It's a great opportunity for us to be here as well.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for hosting us.
Awesome.
It's good to be part of your podcast.
Thank you. It's great to have you both. Before we get into the central part of this conversation, I like to get a little bit of the background of my guests to start. Vikram, can we start with you?
My story is actually quite simplistic. Aviros is my first and only job.
Oh, no.
I am an engineer by background. I did my PhD from Carnegie Mellon, which I finished in end of 2014. The goal was to build a technology platform to build the software infrastructure of the future. And I finished that PhD in kind of a concept of that and wanted to take that to market. And that is how Aviros was born as an OS for Internet of Things.
I can't wait to get to that.
I knew immediately I want to do that. And I came back to India and founded Aviros. And that's all what I'm about. So
I love it.
All through my...
It's so specific. It's so specific. Yatin, and how about you?
So I think I come from a completely different background. Vikram is more of a researcher, and I spent 17 years in business development, sales, alliances, marketing, before me and Vikram met. So I started my professional journey in 2000. So I was fortunate to, work with companies like IBM, CA, Computer Associates, then Cisco, Citrix, and my last experience was with App Dynamics.
Oh, wow.
That was in 2015. In fact, the same year where Vikram started his journey parallelly. And after 15, I moved out and evangelized on technology, and obviously, with the intent to start something on my own.
Right.
However, when I saw the landscape being into IT, so, I thought I need a technology partner with me.
Yeah.
That will be very important aspect of our journey. That's how me and Vikram met. So that's an interesting story. But I think this one is good to introduce me at this point in time.
Can I ask you this? What was it like going to school at Carnegie Mellon in Western Pennsylvania? And how did it make you look at the world in a way that was different if maybe you had just studied in India for your entire life?
Actually, I think I went there as a dreamy-eyed boy, right? I didn't know what to, and it was actually my first time out of India as well.
Oh, wow.
Never traveled outside of India, never knew what the Western world, I think from India perspective, looked like. Comfort that I already had a few friends going to school there at Carnegie Mellon. So there was some microcosm of support already available.
Right.
When I went to Carnegie Mellon, I realized that first thing that hit me was the amount of pride that is involved in a Western education, especially in the tier 1 education like CMU.
Yeah.
It was amazing. So for us, to be honest, right, and India, engineering was known to be, okay, it's a bunch of smart guys, but they will probably be relaxed about the education a little bit. It will not be that much of involved, thorough, I would say, learning.
Really?
Carnegie Mellon changed that completely. So first semester was a big learning curve for me. I was not ready. I actually could not anticipate the environment that was going to come on towards me. And with PhD, it was two things that I had to do in parallel, right? We had to do a few courses as well as start working on my research. I was fortunate with my peer group. They helped me out, but it was a shock in the way even normal computer science courses were done. And it was a big jump.
I am sure.
Fortunately, I sailed through it.
Fortunately, I made it. I want to ask you guys this too. I was doing a recording yesterday, and this just popped into my head. Yeah, I was doing a recording yesterday with a guy and I'm trying to remember this, whose LinkedIn profile said, "The future belongs to those who see possibilities before they become obvious," right? And it reminded me, because I remember this from yesterday's conversation, that I said one of my best investor clients once said to me, "The best investors are those people that anticipate other people's anticipations." And I'm really curious, right? Because you started Awiros, 7 years ago, 2015?
Correct.
Can you both maybe remember what was that thing that you saw that wasn't that obvious to everybody else that said, we've got to build what seems to me, and again, tell me where I'm wrong, this integrated hardware and software company, right? So building an OS, tuning it specifically for specific hardware that you helped design in partnership, right? What did you see that nobody else saw back then?
What I saw or what I thought was that we knew the kind of final submission in my PhD thesis was for such technologies to become market ready and being adopted at scale,
Right.
a software infrastructure has to come into place which allows customers to leverage underlying infrastructure in a more efficient way. So I think I'm not the first one to really invent this idea, but it had already happened in few areas before, right? So mobile phone and smartphone, that journey was a good example for us to take forward from. A normal mobile phone in early 2000 was just to make phone calls or maybe do text messages, right?
Yeah.
But then smartphone came in, marketplace of apps came in, integrated hardware came in, which let you do so many more things that you couldn't have even imagined. And we thought the same thing is supposed to happen in how we automate the physical world. And we believe this should happen. The technology was also changing towards that. But this thought that technology should enable a large scale adoption of automation, especially through video,
Yeah.
and scalable in a scalable way is something that is missing in the world today. And we believe actually in 2015, to be very honest, we believe it will happen in 2 years.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry, we were a little too optimistic, I guess.
But that's
But
normal,
yes,
right?
so it did. So that inflection point we saw did come in end of 2019, early 2020 for
Yeah.
us. And I think Yatin has a very interesting perspective on how hardware and technology also played in a role.
Go ahead, and then I have a follow-up.
Yeah, sure. So I'm not a techie, right, or an engineer, but I think I filled that gap with my view towards how technology at large is adopted, right? And
Yep.
that I was fortunate to have that experience with the companies that I worked with. I think during the same time, 2015-16, I got introduced to video AI, right, as a concept. And parallelly, as Vikram was building up his vision over his PhD thesis, parallelly, when I got introduced to this technology, the interesting thing happened was visualization that can video AI be also adopted at scale, number one. And if it has to be adopted at scale, what are the ingredients which are required? And obviously, as you rightly said, integration of the software, the right hardware, and building those right tool sets so that it can be scaled for adoption was actually missing.
Got it.
And then in that endeavor, I came across another startup which I started consulting, right?
Okay.
And in fact, we're trying to build up something around on the same lines. I think analogy, what struck me during that time was the Android, or the way Android and iOS have transformed adoption of applications on a mobile phone.
Yeah.
Can a similar platform might exist somewhere, or can it be built which can help customers scale the video AI applications? One more interesting timeline was again 2015-16, where computer vision, which is the core technology on Everos, works, right? And artificial intelligence, they started getting commercialized together, right? That helped customers to build a lot of predictability in the application, and the adoption was obvious after that, right? So why I said, brought this story is, interestingly, when me and Vikram met and we had our first conversation, and when I saw what Vikram is really doing, I think all that my, zeal and enthusiasm towards the video AI and the way I thought, I think it matched picture perfect.
Yeah.
So I think that was one point where we both thought that, yes, I think if there are two people, both from different diverse background, one getting the technology aspect, I'm more coming from the market. So there is a market, which I believe. Vikram said, yes, there is a market if this product is there. And I think that was an interesting, handshake, together.
Can we make some analogies here just to make sure that everybody understands this? First of all, it feels to me like there's a through line with what Silicon Graphics did back in like the late 80s and early 90s, right? We want to build a machine that optimizes for this one function, or highly optimizes for this function. And we want to build a machine just for that. Now, they did not have access to the same throughput, connectivity, and compute that we have today. So it's a different thing. But if you look at what I call functional abstraction, right? Let's take something that people use technology to do, but they use it on a general purpose machine. Let's take that function that we think is going to become way more important. Let's abstract it away, and let's build the hardware and the operating system. This is a really nuanced decision to make, not just software, But to build the OS for it means you're making a bigger decision, right? And in a way, what you're saying is, we know we can build a bunch of software on top of this platform ourselves, but the platform business is always going to win because what it does is it democratizes the ability for other people to build on top of the platform, and then the platform never goes away. And even if we can't build every piece of it, we've learned through the development of literally Windows, the tight application of Apple, of Mac OS, and then into the smartphones, that if you own the platform, you own the business. Is that what's happening here in the video AI space?
I think that is exactly the journey and the goal that we are following. So we believe that for this technology to get to its true potential, the underlying challenges. So there are many. Every technology product has vertical technology stack,
Yep.
and the core value add that the technology brings is actually in probably somewhere in the middle, in the top 2, 3 layers only. Right today, just hypothetically, we are using Zoom for this call.
Right.
It runs on so much of existing tech, right?
Yeah.
iOS or Windows and the network stack and so on, the hardware that we're using it for and so on. So it would have been impossible for Zoom or any video conferencing software to actually build it from scratch and take it to market.
Yeah.
Right. So you cannot build a laptop for Zoom. It will not fly.
No,
This is
doesn't make any
exactly
sense.
what is happening.
Right.
This is exactly what has been happening in video AI or this space. So we took a conscious decision that, okay, we are going to do the heavy lifting first for us and then for the world. That the technology stack that involves probably 10 large, complicated technologies, and I think in total about 120 and 30 moving parts.
Yeah.
And we will give you 5 or 6 levers just to play with, so that you can take your application, plug it in, and run it at scale without having to kind of build or reinvent the wheel every single time. Like every other software abstraction or platform has attempted to do in this space, we believe we are among the first to do, and we want to take this to a global scale from here on.
What are some of the difficulties of building your own? I mean, software itself is hard enough to develop, right? I mean, it's just super hard to do, and it's super hard to do well. But now you've added the complexity and the sophistication of building hardware as well. Like where, I'm trying to remember the famous Steve Jobs quote, but somebody said, if you really want to be serious about software, you have to build your own hardware.
You should do that.
Right. So I completely understand this concept. But it does add another level of complexity, right? I mean, it took decades for Microsoft to go, okay, we'll build the Surface, right?
Yes.
And it was just after years of watching Apple eat their lunch in some of those devices. I'm not making a political decision here, but you guys said right from the beginning, if to do this right, we need our own hardware. What level of complexity does it add to building this whole thing? Because what's the right word? The CapEx for building hardware is super different than the CapEx for building software. Yeah.
Absolutely. Luckily, we were fortunate to basically with Yatin's inputs. So we were fortunate to do hardware without a heavy capex, and this is also something that we were able to do well. So one of the things that we actually did was that we focused very deeply on partnering with the hardware OEM. So we went to Intel, we went to NVIDIA, we went to Cisco, we went to Dell, saying that, hey, this is our vision. We want to build this platform. Which should work tightly with the underlying hardware so that the customer can adopt it in a plug and play manner. And of course, we didn't have any success story, but our vision and concept did resonate with some people. And we started benchmarking and building a right mix of, I would say, hardware platforms that could become I would say, or start behaving like an appliance rather than a general purpose computer.
This is the whole point, though, right? Sorry, if you own the hardware and the software, at the end of the day, it should be way easier to use because you control the entire experience. Is that fair?
Exactly. We control. Yes, absolutely. So we, as I mentioned, right, we were fortunate to work with the giants in this space. Even we were a small startup and they are multi-billion-dollar companies. So we got the right support from those companies to I would say, to package the right specifications of hardware in a way that makes it easy for us to port our hardware on. So we have a few white papers in this space with all of those companies, and we have so that helped us do hardware and software infra without the capex challenge. I think this is also something that we are probably, I would say, among the early adopters of this approach in this space. Yatin, I think you anything to add to this?
So I think we were right, at the right place at the right time with these, companies. In fact, 2018-19, obviously, when companies like Intel, NVIDIA, as Vikram mentioned, obviously Cisco and Dell as well, because they are the guys who package everything in hardware. They were also, quite eager to look at new use cases. And I think video AI, obviously, video AI requires a lot of hardware, to run in from an inferencing perspective. So, for us to partner with them, was there a need for them to partner with us? Answer is yes. The company to go behind for these big guys, a company of in 2018, we were like 11 or 12 people company. So, but I think we were really quite excited when the same was reciprocated from the other end. And I think that's where we accelerated our journey of benchmarking and moving towards standardization, because most of the enterprise customers, if they are looking at adoption of this technology, I think they would put their bet on companies which have done some work, some benchmarking. And I think partnering with them really helped us, take that whole position in the market.
Can you walk me through a little bit this process? This is something that's super curious to me. And both of you said this. We were just like an 11-person company dealing with giants. You just don't wake up one day and go, okay, I'm just going to call Intel and just do a deal with them. Like, that's just not the way it works, right? And then do the same thing with Cisco and NVIDIA. You just don't dial like 1-800-deal guy and just get that guy on the phone and do the thing. I'm really curious what the process is like. And I mean this, right? Because I don't know about finding the right person to talk to, maybe getting a little bit of a runaround internally. Like, what is that whole process like? And how long does it take, right? Because for a startup, every day is another dollar potentially spent and invested, and every day matters. So I'm just curious what that process is like.
Obviously, I think, as I said, me and Vikram, we have a lot of complementing skills, right? Vikram, obviously, is doing the heavy lifting on the tech. However, when I decided to take that leap and jump in this decade domain, I already spent 17 years in the industry. So
right. Super connected.
Yeah, that my network helped me at least, open the doors or not open, in fact, knock the right doors to begin with.
Right.
However, when we, it was absolutely a sales pitch that we made to these companies, right? When they saw merit, I think that's where things started changing. However, we were fortunate enough to have that network in place so that we can cut down on that legwork and spending time to find out the right resources or the connects. So I think this is one very, very important aspect. And obviously, once we had the right connect established, I think our tech team did a phenomenal job in terms of turnaround.
Yeah.
The expectation was, obviously, we get only one chance, right. And there are many in the queue, right? So that was the only window. What helped was to turn around immediately and show the real results and outputs. And obviously, that is reflecting in the white papers that are published, not on our websites, but all these 4 companies, we have a white paper at least published now.
Got it. Vikram, is there a kind of, and I say this along with you, right? But is there a kind of geek joy in this optimization process? Do you know what I mean? Being able to take software that the team has written and the hardware that the team has built and just make it better and better and better. So then when you go to Intel and Cisco and NVIDIA and Dell, right, they're like, wow, I can't believe how much this has changed. Is there some kind of geek joy in this? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So this is the only joy that has actually kept us going, to be honest, right? So you can't imagine, there are some of the things that we discover still, that there are these windows of optimization. So I'll give you one example of very recent phenomena, right? So we were now testing our platform on running at a large cluster. So instead of running on one device, now we are running it on, let's say, 10 large Dell servers together.
Wow.
And we want to monitor throughput from every single component in the system. So the Intel CPUs, the NVIDIA GPUs, and one fine day, we were actually me and Yatin were looking at a screen and we were saying, this one piece of hardware is not giving the right throughput. Why? Where is this bottleneck? So we were actually brainstorming. We thought maybe the network card is getting the bottleneck here. Maybe the motherboard is a bottleneck. Maybe it's not the right configuration. We were like shell shocked. because this was not something that we expected.
Right.
And this is I'm not talking about 4 years ago. I'm talking about 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Okay, because earlier we did that, but we never went into that detail. That what impact? I'll tell you. So what happened was that so there are buses on the motherboard, like PCIe buses, right?
Yep.
So their capacity actually matters when we are running things at this scale. And we were shocked to find that except for probably very small community somewhere hidden in this internet world, nobody had actually anticipated this problem. So one GPU or one NVIDIA device is only getting a certain limited bandwidth from the motherboard and the CPU.
I love
And
this.
the entire hardware chain, the PCI bus on the card, the PCI bus on the motherboard, the PCI channel supported by the CPU, all of them have to match and kind of be able to take up that workload simultaneously. If there is a delta anywhere in this middle, right? If there is any one weak link in the chain, the entire chain actually slows down. And that is what was happening. And we were trying to dig out forums and where it could have been done at scale. We couldn't find any. So this was a discovery. I wouldn't say it was an invention, but a discovery which gave us a lot of joy. And I was actually running around the with the team that, hey, look at this. This is something that we have found. And I went to Yatin was actually coming from the other side. Yatin, see what we have found. Why the behavior that we were seeing, why was that happening? We were able to kind of figure that out. Yes. So that childish joy of figuring out things is a primary mover for us.
It sure is. It's you can hear it in your voice.
Mike,
That's sorry, Yatin, go ahead.
Mike, no, I was trying to add, some sales joy also, right?
For sure.
So yeah, so 2000, we were just a team of 11 people, and every single small achievement, was celebrated.
Right.
I remember one incident. This was the third meeting with one of my sales team members, and me and him were, presenting to third customer.
Okay.
Why I said third, you'll understand. First meeting was when we showcased our Cisco white paper first time to one of the customers. So I went to Cisco's website, I went to their product, I went to data center, I went to servers, and I followed that track. In the second meeting again, while the PDF was in my cache, I could just simply click the URL and went. So I again did the same thing. In the third meeting, my team member asked, when it is on cache, why do you always go? I said, that's where, we make, that wow factor is there, right? Oh, we are on website of a company like Cisco, right? So even, those small, things are celebrated. And in fact, obviously, we still celebrate them now. Any smaller, large win or alliance or recognition from, the ecosystem outside. So that's how, these small joys are, they look forward to such experiences always, right? As a startup.
Absolutely. I mean, every little win is a gigantic win. It feels like, isn't it? You got to celebrate this stuff. So do you look at the Shopify business model? And I'm not talking about the e-commerce thing, but just the platform that they built. And then the way that they've given access to that platform for third-party software developers to then build on it, but also to give those third-party developers, just from a business perspective, a way for them to also build very large businesses, right? So that all of the value doesn't only accrue to Shopify. It accrues to companies like Shogun. This is a year ago now, right? Who raised money at like $500 million or $750 million valuation. A lot of it actually invested by Shopify into them. Are you looking at the same type of business model where if you can enable other companies to build onto the app stack, right, that then they can also become big companies in their own right, but still sit on the platform? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Exactly. That is exactly the idea and the vision that we have. Unfortunately, the challenge is that because we are working in slightly little more complicated technology from aggregating things point of view. So now we are starting to build those connections in the market where other developers can easily adopt our platform and start building. We are starting small because this is something, again, that I think this is our next, I would say, geek kick that we are expecting coming in from here, right? So now we have done the building part and we have done the customer connect part. So developer connect part is something that is our next frontier to capture.
Got it.
And exactly, we would love to have large companies being built on Avirov's platform. And we just take a back seat and say, hey, we have the tools, we have the infra, we provide you the customer connect as well. You just build and take the technology to its logical conclusion.
What is the impact of what's happening at OpenAI? Like all this stuff you hear about ChatGPT, the GPT-3 into GPT-4, the DALL-E stuff. Like, what is the impact of all of that research and work that's getting done? It's almost like real-time research in a way, right? Like,
absolutely. It's
and this idea of open sourcing it obviously is kind of amazing. But like, what is the impact of that on you? Do you lean on some of that development as well? Like, what's the intersection of what you're building and what they're building? Is that a fair question? Or
it's absolutely a fair question. Actually, just yesterday, I got my access into ChatGPT and I did a quick demo to my entire team that, hey, look, first question I typed into it, how can video AI scale on heterogeneous hardware? That was my first query on ChatGPT, to be honest.
Oh, wow.
I have a screenshot of that as well, but having said that, so the impact and the intersection that this has is twofold. One, it helps us actually create a lot of tailwind about adoption of technology in general.
Right.
So from a market point of view, people know that now we are not talking about a technology which is in the lab. We are talking about something that has real impact, and it can actually fundamentally change the way we do things. So it is helping in setting up that flagpole, which everybody can look up to, and it makes our job as a company easier to pitch our solutions. That is one. And second, the research and the activity that is happening in here, we basically, the envelope of available technology is expanding as well, right? So there are GPT-3, now GPT-4 is actually in the works. That is going to be another beast. On the other side, there is stable diffusion. And also, so this research is fueling a lot of expansion. So all of them are, I would say, what we call in the generative AI space, where you can generate content, right? So this research and this advancement is also helping in automating several tasks in the interpretation application of AI, where we lie actually. So how we interpret video, how we interpret images, how we do that for a given customer is also getting benefited, because a lot of that content can actually help us, number one, train better AI. Number two, write better code. So we actually tested GPT for some key concepts that are being used, and it did not, of course, as good a job as a human programmer today, but a close to probably 80% of that job. And third, very important factor that this intersection is going to help us with is that the new architectures that are being built, right? So this actually validates our platform assumption that there is a lot of shifting ground under the world, and we need to have a platform on top of it which allows you to leverage the underlying technology in a seamless way.
Right.
So that actually validates our platforms or OS stance as well, because nobody can actually, or nobody should worry about everything that is happening in the world to build a new technology, right? We take care of that for you. You just build on top of the interface that we provide to you.
This gets back to the functional abstraction stuff that we were talking about earlier, right?
Exactly.
This idea that if I want to optimize my video AI code, why should I do that myself? Why shouldn't I just talk to an operating system that's already done the optimization to the machine? But again, this is not like a novel concept. We do this everywhere, but what you're doing is you're abstracting it out and taking that function and just highly optimizing that. This should be obvious to people when they look at it, right? Can I ask you this too, though? Are you surprised is like the wrong way to, it's the wrong word choice here. But like when you started doing this back in 2015, you had this vision of like where artificial intelligence and its relationship to video and the ability to analyze it could be. But how would you characterize how much the technology has changed? Right? Because I'm not involved in it every day, right?
Yes.
You know, and I always say like, the guy who designs the windshield wiper on the car must be bummed out because he's still like a car engineer, but the windshield wipers haven't changed much in 150 years kind of thing.
Yeah.
But what you're working on, what you guys are working on is changing like moment by moment. And I'm just curious for those of us that are uninitiated, how sophisticated and how much different it is today than it was in 2015.
Okay, I think I'll give a short answer, right? The difference is actually like having exactly on the level of having assembly language or assembly code to a Python code.
Got it.
So it's that different.
That's what I want to know.
So we actually, so So what computer engineering went from probably, I would say, late 60s, 2010, the journey that was traveled in 50 years, the same journey AI has traveled in 5 years.
That's what I want to know.
Same level of transition. I think probably more, to be honest, right? So in 2015, I can tell you, writing a simple application, the technology, the hardware requirement, the underlying support that was available, right? It was like banging our head against the wall every single second. Now, lot, a lot of these challenges have been more structured, have been optimized at a great degree, and we have changed. Or I think one thing that we have done well so far is to adapt very quickly as well. Like with newer technologies coming in, newer optimizations coming in, we have also stayed ahead of the curve in adopting them before they even get to public in most cases. So yes, it has made our job tougher in one way. It has made it more exciting in another way.
Right.
But the change is drastic. I think being able to write one application was a 6-month job on a Windows platform in 2015. Today it is probably less than 6 days job. So you can also compare it that way, right? The speed has increased dramatically
Yeah.
in all respects.
I think a lot of people use AWS as an example of how a piece of technology
Right.
was abstracted away,
Correct.
right? And this feels like the same thing in the sense that I remember, so you don't know this, but when I was at Morgan Stanley, I was actually a Unix systems administrator. I went through a course
Wow.
I did. I went through a course at Sun Microsystems in New York and did all that stuff anyway. But building your own server from scratch was something that we did do. We wrote our own scripts. We did the software. We could implement it and propagate it across the whole place where we maintained those servers and the desktop machines. And yet one day AWS just went, just send us a check and you're already done. And it's highly optimized. Right. But I'm just making the analogy so people can understand, because that's kind of what you're saying, right? Like if you want to do video AI, that's great. Build an app for it, but don't do all this back-end optimization because it's a waste of your time, and we've already done it for you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And our experience says the split is anywhere between 10:90 or maybe 20:80 in the best case, right?
Yep.
So 10% is the core effort and 80% is the other engineering effort,
Right.
which is not your core job at all.
No.
Let somebody else take care of it. And exactly like AWS takes care of managing servers for you, and we will take care of managing the underlying infra for you.
What is the implication or the impact of quantum computing on this space? And how hard is it to port the OS from one hardware architecture or one architecture to another?
Probably an ignorant answer. I don't fully understand the spread of it, but from what I understand, quantum computing is great at trying different combinations which were linearly happening earlier in normal computers. Quantum can actually try multiple states at once. That is what quantum computing is all about.
Yep.
So it is great at cracking code and maybe helping in some sort of highly efficient compute. As of now, at least in my belief, the way deep learning or AI software is written, it is a linear network of nodes or a series of nodes that basically process incoming information and give you insight, right? So if we pass in an image, it goes through stages of processing and tells you there are 4 people in that image, for example. So in this architecture, mapping the advantages of quantum computing into it are not that obvious yet. Not only to me, I don't think to a community at large. It will need a fundamental rewrite of how this compute is done. And I'm sure people are already working on that. In general, for us or for this industry to adopt new hardware or new hardware architecture is a big learning curve always, because this fundamentally changes the way software is written at the first place, and then software optimization is done at the second place as well. Actually, we are proud today to say that we are now portable on Intel, NVIDIA, Qualcomm, AMD, and a couple other younger acceleration hardwares. Of course, not quantum computing there yet. So we have done our bit in making sure that our apps are portable across these 5 hardware platforms, including Kinara, another very promising hardware platform that we are working closely with as well. But yes, it takes a lot of effort. And as an OS, now it is our job to make it easy for everybody else. When an app is written for, let's say, Windows, right? It doesn't matter whether it's going to run on an Intel hardware or an AMD hardware, for example, right? Or same happens for an Android app. We are exactly doing the same for video AI as well.
Got it. Yatin, do you want to give any closing comment?
Talking about one core element around in the ecosystem, which is the customer, right? So I think what Vikram mentioned about 80-20 or 90-10,
Right.
where 10% is the core algorithm and, the rest of 90% is the engineering around it. And that's what Aviros is doing. I think we need to understand what is driving on both the sides, customer as well as tech.
Yeah.
Customer is making significant investment, capex investment in cameras, in network, in buying expensive hardware for inferencing, right? Obviously, he is not going to just use one application. How do he derives the investment, out of the ROI, which is he's trying to get? What we have seen is from 18 till now, on an average, a customer is using at least 10 applications of Aviros on an average on the same infrastructure. Now, if that is the pace at which the adoption of application is increasing, the development of the application also has to match the same pace, right? And that is the exact point where these two, the requirement and Aviros's thought process and vision meets together. We are trying to enable and accelerate the development of application by creating this ecosystem and creating a marketplace for the customers to adopt application across the domains. And that is where we believe that we will be able to serve each and every customer with whatever applications or field of view of the camera allows you to run, right? Not every application will be able to run on every camera field of view. I think this is an interesting equation which is building up. And we believe that, again, the technologies like 5G and Edge AI, I think these two are going to be very, very important in enhancing and accelerating the adoption of applications by the customers. I think here the behavior is very important to understand where this whole thing is getting driven from.
Do you want to explain to people why? Do you want to explain to people why 5G matters? And you said Edge AI, because there's a difference here between edge computing, cloud computing, which we should probably explain to people, right? Because it matters where, particularly on a mobile device, like just how close it is to the stuff that's actually getting processed, so that the latency between what's being thought and then what's getting sent is minimized. Sorry, you want to just explain what that difference is?
The difference is in the way it is completely architected, right?
Yeah.
There are two ways to bring. One is either you bring the complete video onto a data center and process it and infer it at the data center, but that's too costly. And at times, the lag in terms of sending the metadata back and action being taken on that metadata is something which will be very important for few customers. Take example of traffic.
I was going to say a car moving at 120 kilometers an hour.
Car moving at 120 kilometers an hour. And suppose, there is a violation of traffic signal.
Right.
I think the local authorities want, the metadata and the action to be generated real at where the action is happening, right? It is at the edge or at a traffic signal. So when we talk about Edge AI, that will enable faster decision-making for businesses. Take example of a foundry.
Where chips are made.
There may be, not the chips one, but the real manufacturing, heavy engineering.
Got it.
So how Edge AI will impact is, let's say there is a safety compliance issue at a remote factory and there are connected factories. So it cannot happen that the video travel all the way down to a data center and, it will basically delay the process. It may be a safety hazard. So the real-time inferencing will allow the person at the action point to take decision immediately. And, this is actually prevalent across a lot of applications of compliance, traffic, security, safety. So this is going to impact in a big way. Obviously, one factor which will also be important to look at is how the cost of hardware inferencing comes down. I think the telecom operators, developers of the hardware, all have to kind of come together and boost this whole idea of adoption. Still, we believe it's a consumer would take a call whether to go for a particular architecture depending upon how much expenditure is getting incurred in, or the capex is incurred in those this whole decision making.
If you're building your own OS, right, and you're optimizing it for your own hardware, sorry to jump back into this again, but just a little bit more stuff that's interesting to me. You're also going to have to build your own tools for development on that OS, right? So, and because it's a new operating system, the tools are probably also new. In a way, it reminds me of what Apple did when they moved from Objective-C into Swift, and they were like, this is the new paradigm. It's not finished yet, per se,
Yeah.
So how closely are you working together with your partners in the development, not just of the OS, like we need to have this access or that access, but in the tools as well so that they can build the proper applications for that platform?
Yes. So I think I'll give a very quick short answer. We have a tool called Genie. It's basically not a tool, but it's a tool chain called Genie, which does the magic behind
I
the
get
scenes
it.
for you,
I get it.
gives you a boilerplate or a sandbox to play around, and you just plug in a few your bits in there and get up and running. Slightly, I think, more involved answer is that we have taken a conscious choice in not building or not changing the way significantly the things have been done. So, for example, if a person is familiar with a certain way of writing computer vision or video AI applications, we have used the similar formats and
Got it.
programming languages and interfaces so that it is the transition from how things are done outside of Aviros and how are things done within Aviros are nearly the same. Of course, there is some learning curve, but we have not drastically changed, consciously drastically changed that approach. We have used the existing tools chains as much as possible. Of
Got it.
course, we have built our own libraries on top of it, which is hopefully not going to be a steep hill for anybody else to climb.
Okay, boys, I'm going to let you go. I really appreciate your
Sure.
time today. Vikram Gupta, Yatin Kavishwar, co-founders of Aviros. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. This was awesome.
This was lovely. Thank you, Michael. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael.